Welcome to Informatica Cloud 101 on-demand course. In this module, we will look at how you can create and configure data synchronization tasks. After completing this module, you will be able to explain the purpose of the data synchronization application, build, test, and run a data synchronization task, use the activity log to review and debug errors, understand the types of log files that are available, and locate all log files. The data synchronization application allows you to synchronize data between a source and a target. Some example business scenarios of where you might use the data synchronization application would be reading leads from a file and writing them into Salesforce, finding new account records in your ERP system and inserting those into Salesforce, or finding modified contact records in Salesforce and updating them in your ERP system. So as I mentioned before, the data synchronization service is a primary application you will use for your data integration tasks. When you create a new data synchronization task, the first thing you will have to define is which operation you want the task to perform. A data synchronization task can perform one of the following four operations: insert, update, upsert, which is to update the record if it exists in the target, or insert the record if it does not exist in the target, and delete. With the insert option, all of your source rows will be inserted into the target. An ideal use for the insert operation in a data synchronization task would be to perform a one-time or initial load of data into your target system. When you run an insert operation, you run the risk of creating duplicate records in your target system. The insert operation simply inserts all records in the source and does not take into consideration the records that might already exist in the target. So just to give you a visual of an insert scenario, you have a source with records A, D, E, and F. You can run a data synchronization task with an insert operation on a target that contains the records A, B, C, and D. The end result is that duplicate records are created for records A and D in the target, since they already existed there. With the insert operation, they are just going to be inserted again. The update operation updates existing rows of data that it finds a match for. So if there is a row in your source that does not exist in the target, then that row will simply fail out. This means that you will get an error message for that row only. However, the rest of the task will still run. In this example, you can see that the source contains version 1 of record A and version 1 of record D, as well as records E and F. You run a data synchronization task with an update operation on a target that contains version 2 of record A and version 2 of record D, as well as records B and C. The end result is that records A and D are updated to version 1. Records E and F return error because they were not in the target, and records B and C remain unchanged because they were not in the source. The upsert operation allows you to use a single task to update existing data and insert any new data. So if you are synchronizing data between two systems, for example, your account data in Salesforce and maybe a billing system, then typically it is the upsert operation you would use to do that. One thing to note is that the upsert operation is not supported for a flat file target. It is something you would use with the Salesforce or a database target. The last operation is the delete operation. This operation allows you to delete all rows from the target that exist in the source. After you have defined the operation that your task is going to perform, you would then choose a source for your data synchronization task. Your source could be a single flat file, a database table, a Salesforce object, or a customer source object, which is also called as a saved query. Lastly, you do have the ability to combine data from up to 5 database tables, or Salesforce objects. In terms of the target that is supported for data synchronization task, you can write data to a single flat file, a database table, or Salesforce object. Again, one thing to note is that the target connection that you can use also depend on the task operation you select. For example, if you select the upsert operation, then you cannot use a flat file target connection, because you can't upsert records into a flat file target. There are some other options you can configure for the Salesforce sources only. When you select a Salesforce source, you have the option to include archived and deleted rows, which is essentially the historical data in Salesforce. By default, this option is turned off, but it's something you can enable. So if you turn it on for certain update operations, then it will include that archived or deleted data. When you configure a data synchronization task, the bulk of the work is going to be in defining the field mappings, or how the source field maps to target fields. You will notice that Informatica Cloud automatically maps fields with similar names. To map additional fields, drag and drop a source field on a target field. Keep in mind that you should map fields with compatible data types. You can also use a field-level expression to convert the data type, and this is something that will be discussed in a later module. After you have mapped all fields, there is a button to validate the mapping and check for any errors. You should always do that before saving and running the task. When you're on the field mapping step of the wizard, there are some icons that identify important fields. First, the golden key indicates that the field is a primary key for the object. The white key in the golden box indicates that the field is the external ID field for the object. This applies to Salesforce objects only. External IDs will be discussed in more detail in the next module. The white star in the gray circle indicates that a field cannot contain null values. And in most cases, this means that the field may be mapped for insert. You should note that sometimes fields marked with this icon are fields that are automatically populated by Salesforce. So it's just something to be aware of. Remember that the agent is what actually runs the task. So you can only have one agent per task. If you attempt to use two different agents in a single task, you will get a runtime error. Note that this also includes the agent used in any lookup connections as well. The exception is for SAS connections. When you have a task with SAS source and a SAS target, for example, a Salesforce to Salesforce task, you must specify which agent to run the task. This is done in step 6 of the data synchronization wizard. In some cases, you need to change the source or target, or both, in a task that you have already configured and saved. For example, you may build and test a task using a Salesforce sandbox connection. Then copy and edit the task to use the Salesforce production connection. When you change one or more of the task's endpoints, there are a few things you should do to ensure that your task doesn't break. We always like to bring this to people's attention because it is something that happens quite frequently. You should always make sure that you refresh fields in step 5 of the wizard. This will ensure that you have the latest metadata for the fields from the connection and the object. In some cases, you may need to clear the mapping to remove references to old fields. Finally, always be sure to validate the mapping. When you start a task in Informatica Cloud, the status of the task is displayed in the monitor. It shows you the tasks that are currently running. So this includes tasks run by other users or scheduled tasks that are processing. If you ever need to stop a task, you can do that from the monitor. You may want to stop a task if it just keeps running and running, taking longer than you had anticipated. One thing about stopping a task is that there is no rollback feature. So if you stop a task and some rows of data have already been processed, then the data will remain in your target. After you have run a task, the first thing you will want to review is the status of the job. Synchronization tasks can have one of the following statuses. Starting, which means the job is starting. Running means the job is still in process. Success, this indicates that the job ran successfully without any errors. Failed, this indicates that the job failed to complete due to an error, and that no rows were moved from source to target. Warning, this indicates that the job completed, but one or more rows failed. In case of the warning status, an error rows file is generated, which you can review to see the failed rows and error messages. I will now demonstrate how to create a data synchronization task using the insert operation and load data from a CSV file into Salesforce. I will show you how to review task status in the Activity Monitor and view the job details. In this demo, we will create a synchronization task that will load customer data from a CSV file into the Salesforce.com account object. To create a synchronization task in IICS, log into the Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services. Select Data Integration Service. The home page appears. To create a new asset, in the left navigation pane, click New. Click Synchronization Task option on the New Asset window. Now click the Create button. A 6-step synchronization task wizard appears. Specify definition information and retain the default project or folder location. From the Task Operation drop-down, select Insert and click Next. To configure the source, from the Connection drop-down, select the flat file connection. Select Customers.csv from the Source Object drop-down and click Next. Now to configure the target, from the Connection drop-down, select the Salesforce connection. From the Target Object drop-down, select Account and click Next twice. In this demo, we will skip the data filter. In the field mapping step, name field of the source has been automatically mapped to the account name field in the target. The green check mark in the status column indicates that the field has been mapped. Map the fields by dragging them from source to the target. To ensure that the mapping has no errors, click Validate Mapping. As the mapping is validated, we will save the task. Click Save and click Finish to save and close the synchronization task wizard. Now to run the synchronization task, click Run. To monitor the task in the navigation pane, click My Jobs. The task status is shown in the status column on the My Jobs page. We can observe that the status of the synchronization task has changed to Success. To view the notifications, click the Notifications icon. To verify the result in Salesforce, we log into the Salesforce Developer org and search for the account that we require. We observe that all the accounts in the source file are present in the Salesforce account object. This concludes the demo. Let us now talk a bit about the log files that Informatica Cloud generates. The first is error rows. So if your task has rows that do fail out for any reason, those will be logged in what is called error rows file. The error rows file includes each row that failed, and it also includes a column called error that contains a detailed error message for each row. The second type of log file is a session log. This is basically a technical log file for the task. So all the technical details about the task are included in this log file. The session log will be generated for any type of task that is running in Informatica Cloud, regardless of the status. The last type of log file is the success files. By default, these are not generated. However, you have the option to turn them on if your task has a Salesforce target. This log file has a record of the actions that take place in Salesforce. The Salesforce success file contains a record of all rows that were processed, whether they were created, updated, or deleted. You would use the success files to track rows that were created in case you need to roll back the operation. For each of these type of log files, Informatica Cloud stores up to 10 per task. Therefore, when a task is run on the 11th time in Informatica Cloud, the first log file will be overwritten, And when the task is run for the 12th time, the second log file will be overwritten, and so on. So if you want some sort of historical record of your tasks, you must set up some sort of an archiving into another directory. The error row files get stored under the agent installation directory, under a directory called main, and then under rdtmdir. Then depending on the type of log file, it will be stored in one of those folders. So in the slide, the error log file directory is highlighted. In case you need to specifically go looking for a log file, then you should understand a little bit about the log file naming conventions. The preface indicates the type of task. So DSS would be data synchronization. DRS would be data replication, and so on. Then every task in Informatica Cloud has a unique ID, so that it is indicated in the next part of the log file name. Finally, the _1 or _2 indicates the number that the task has run, 1 up to 10. I will now demonstrate how to view an error rows preview file from the activity log and use it to debug a task, locate the task ID, and view the task details. In this demo, we will see how to preview an error rows file from the monitor and use it to debug a task. We will also locate the task ID and view the task details page. Log in to the Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services and select Monitor. We can see a list of all the tasks. To preview an error file for a failed task, locate the task and click the Download icon. We can see the errors from the file and use them to debug the task. To locate the task ID, select the task. In the URL section, we can observe the task ID as highlighted on the screen. This concludes the demo. So in your lab, you're going to create a data synchronization task that inserts customers from a flat file into your account object in Salesforce. Then you're going to run the task and validate the results. This concludes Module 4. This module showed you how to create, configure, and run a data synchronization task. Use the activity monitor to validate results, debug task and row level errors, and locate all success, session, and error row log files.